Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Business Advisory Services Update webinar. I'm Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS, and I'm joined today by Andrew Geddes, former Chair of Green Cross Limited and external chairman to quite a number of multidiscipline professional services. How are you today, Andrew?
Well, thanks, Peter.
That's very good. Well, today we're going to talk about research and development. What do you know? You know a lot about research and development, Andrew?
Peter, all I know is that in the last couple of decades, both you and I have helped a lot of small businesses put together business plans, then to seek investors, then to look at what government grants are available, and then to look at, well, if we're spending a lot of money, is it allowable under the ATO's research and development legislation and guidelines and interpretation? So I think it's fair to say we both feel that accountants need to know more about this area, particularly post-COVID, because a lot of businesses are innovating, investing, they're having to change, the marketplace is changing. So I thought this was a great opportunity for you to let us know what you've developed in terms of ESS BIZTOOLS offerings and to share our experiences. So let me ask you, what is allowable as research and development expenditure and what might we get back?
Very good question. But we need to go back to the beginning. It all starts with an idea that someone comes across in a workshop, an office, a factory, a farm, could be anywhere, research and development. It might be someone on a computer. About 30% of R&D projects, according to Oz Industry, are built around software, computers.
Yep. Could be a customer, perhaps.
Yes.
Coming up with a suggestion.
Yes, and it flows from there. One of the initial big requirements is that to be able to claim the research and development incentive rebate, the business has to be a company.
Right.
So one of the suggestions I'd be making to our accountant viewers today, Andrew, is that you start talking about this, especially following on the lockdown situation. And obviously Victoria's just had another 5 days. And when they're talking about building these special villages to house people who have to go into quarantine, it makes me believe that the health authorities are obviously saying to the governments, this is going to be around for a long time.
Yes.
So during this period of lockdown, some of your clients may have been doing some tinkering. They've gone to their sheds, they've gone to their farm shed, or they're sitting on a computer and they're potentially developing new products. My advice is you need to find out who they are as soon as possible if you're really performing the trusted advisor's role, and talk to them. Is it just a hobby that they're doing, or do they think they're seriously developing the new Google or whatever? And if so, they need to get themselves into a company. That's the first step.
Well, Peter, I know several small business clients that have moved a substantial part of their business to an online offering. They've revamped their services and or their products and their delivery methodologies. So they have spent time creating considerable change and spending money to set it up and be able to operate.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's probably thousands of them around Australia. The challenge for the accountancy profession, with everything else that's going on at present, is alerting them. In our updated system, we've got some suggested communications that you might send to your clients and invite them to a webinar. Have a discussion. Try to find out who has been doing something. And
put a video on your website.
Video on the website.
An e-news blast.
That's right. So there is a marketing requirement. In fact, there is marketing required for every aspect of promoting business advisory services. But let's just get back to our journey. We've got an idea. We're a company. The tax regulations, and the regulations are also developed by Oz Industry, then require a process to be implemented. The company needs to undertake some prior art and or literature searches. Now that sounds very technical and sounds a bit like a university, but it is, because a lot of this whole concept around research and development from the government's point of view has been based on what they believe happens within universities.
Well, Peter, most of us, when we've got a business idea, go to the internet and do searches to try and learn about how might we set this up and deliver it. Has anyone else done it? So we are doing literature searches.
Yes, keep a record of them though, because you could be called upon to substantiate to the tax office that you have actually done that. So that's the, other than the idea and having a company, that's the next step. Undertake your literature searches, because if someone else has already got it, no one's going to pay you for it.
Yep.
Is basically, and most definitely the Australian government won't give you any additional taxation benefits if you're developing something else. So they're looking for new knowledge.
Yes.
You then need to think about how you're going to go about undertaking this research and identify one or more hypotheses that relate to that particular concept that you've got in mind. And then that needs to be documented, and experiments are undertaken whereby you set out to prove what you've identified in your hypothesis.
So Peter, that, just so people understand, that could be, if I invent a new cane harvester using pneumatics similar to the grape harvesting industry, we might be able to reduce our harvesting costs and have greater efficiency. So it's if we do this, we might get that. That's a hypothesis.
Yes.
That's what they're wanting you to document, and then run some experiments on testing that.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you prove it one way or the other. Now, can I make an important comment? Because I have had accountants ring me and say, oh, it's no use talking about research and development to my clients because none of it worked. And I said, I beg your pardon. And the guy on the other end of the phone, who remained nameless, said, oh, you can claim this even if it's a business failure. You can. The research and development does not have to be successful. It's the process that you have to be able to document. The end result, strange as it may seem, is really not that important to the government. They just want to know you've gone through this process. And if unfortunately you spend $30,000 or $40,000 in undertaking the research, and at the end of the day discover that you can't prove your hypothesis, well, that's bad luck. The government is then encouraging you to think about going on to the next project, because that's what they want Australians to do, to invent and innovate. And they appreciate that not every process, not every invention is going to be successful.
So it de-risks it a little by saying if it doesn't work, we still may get some of the 100 grand we've spent back, 43.5%, if I understand it. And then you can move on to the next innovation or hypothesis or idea that you want to test.
That's right. And as you said, for companies with turnovers under $20 million, the calculation is 43.5%. It's been set at 17.5% above the company tax rate for small companies. So it's 43.5%. And it's a rebate off their tax bill. So if they've spent, make it easy, $1 million, the rebate's $435,000.
Yep.
That the company can claim in their tax return.
Yes.
But there is a very important benefit for companies with turnovers under $20 million, because the government realizes that a lot of small businesses and very small people are undertaking this research, and most of them are lacking money. They're looking for money all the time. So the government allows them to draw back the 43.5% of their expenditure as a cash refund to the business within 30 days of lodgement of the company's tax return. Okay. So that's a great initiative to them. So in our hypothetical, the company spent $1 million. The claim would have been, or is, $435,000. The tax office will pay that $435,000 into the company's bank account within 30 days.
Yes. What if the company has not made a profit?
well, they're trading at a loss there. So it doesn't have to make a profit.
You'll still get
They
the
will pay it.
rebate. Yes.
Yeah, it hasn't made it hasn't made a it's allocating in effect the money out of their loss account in their profit and loss appropriation.
Yep.
So instead of having a carry forward loss, and the example, I didn't say what the loss was. Let's say the loss was $500,000
Yep.
for the company in the year. They've got a bit of other income. They've lost $500,000, but they've got this rebate of $435,000. That then comes off the $500,000, so their carry forward loss is now reduced to $65,000 that they've got for future operations.
And they get that cash back into the business.
The tax office, when you've got to elect that you want that cash.
Yes.
Your accountants we're talking to, you need to indicate on the tax form that your client would like that refund. The tax office, I haven't done tax returns for some years, Andrew. I've stopped doing that, but I think they already know the company's bank account details. If not, you'll be required to put them into the form, and the tax office will pay that money direct to the company's bank account. So
but if they were in a loss, the carry forward loss would be reduced.
Yeah, it's reduced.
Which is fair enough, because you've got the 435 grand in your bank account.
Yes, and for this reason, accountants, you may have found some of your clients are coming and talking to you early in July, wanting their tax returns lodged, people in business. Invariably, it's because they have undertaken research and development activities, and they are trying to get the refund amount.
Yes.
Now, presumably you know about that as an accountant, but perhaps you don't, because they've gone to someone else, like a large consulting company or a big four firm, to give them advice on research and development. I don't believe that's necessary, though. And that's why we have developed this system, because I had quite a number of accountants have contacted me over the last couple of years. And when COVID hit, I think this is a perfect reason for me to concentrate our resources on the research and development product package.
Yes.
Because I'm certain there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people around Australia, clients of small and medium-sized accountancy businesses who have potentially been undertaking R&D during this period.
And Peter, if the accounting firm feels they cannot handle the job, at least they can make their clients aware and help them find someone who can do it if they don't want to. That's
right. And in fact, wearing my consultant's hat, I've gone through that very similar situation recently. In sometime, I think it was in June, I got a phone call from someone I met at one of your events many years ago, Andrew, to be honest. And he's now advising an accounting firm. And he said to me, could I help them? So I had a conversation, a Zoom conversation with the client and the accounting team. And we agreed to an arrangement where we subcontracted to the accountant, and we took the review. Part of that was one of the accountant's team was involved in the process as well. And we were able to assist them to get all the information they required to complete the tax return for that client. And we received a substantial refund. And as part of that, we've revamped all of the systems that were being used in that business to bring them up to what we consider is the compliance requirement.
The required documentation of the process, yes. So Peter, once you've done that, in your ESS BizTools offering there, you have details of what's required to document all of that research and development process. If we move on to the next stage, let's then talk about perhaps a company then is able to move to accelerating commercialization grants or even early stage innovation grants.
Yes, I've want to talk about that because one of the processes is that research and development is really only the first phase of a journey that most of these clients are going to be on. And it seems to be a characteristics of a lot of these companies, including mine over the years. When you're developing new material, you're you're doing a lot of work that you're not actually getting paid for at that stage. So it is a drain on cash flow.
Yes, it is.
And the government recognises this. And for 10 years, we've had a major government grant program called Accelerating Commercialisation. Now, it's a grant of up to $1 million on a 50% contribution basis. So if a client gets the full grant of $1 million, it means that there's $2 million worth of work to be undertaken. That application can be made for a company with a turnover from $0 to $20 million. So brand new startups can apply, but it doesn't fund research and development. It takes over from when the research and development is finished.
Yep.
Because some clients think that once they finish their prototype, that their R&D journey's over. Well, unfortunately, they're only at the very beginning.
Yes.
It's a bit like getting your football boots. You've now got them on. You've got to go onto the field and start kicking the ball.
Or like the cane grower, he's devised a prototype new cane machine, harvesting machine. Then they have to build a production facility.
They've got to build it. They've got to think about their licensing. They've got to think about patenting in it. They've got to. There's a whole range of issues. Yes. Getting distributors, developing training manuals. Yeah. So it's this commercialization. I did work as a consultant for Oz Industry on the predecessor to this program, which was called Commercializing Emerging Technology. Yes, and I know the strain and pain on people's finances that this commercialization phase took. When I was involved, we were immediately going to the market under Section 708, trying to raise capital for these people. But thankfully, our group, which was only 12 of us in Australia, we made representations to the government and said, you need more money in this. You need to fund people to help them commercialize. And that's where accelerating commercialization come from. So it's great for companies that have finished their research and development, but they need to do more. I've actually worked with someone developing a new cane harvester in this program, and part of the $1 million was about $400,000 in wages for their key team, their directors and managers, to do ongoing work that was required to take it from a prototype into something that looked like a practical cane harvester. And it's amazing the number of changes that were made, even down to the tires on it were different to what was originally envisaged.
And that's a 50-50. You spend money and the government matches that 50-50.
Well, they actually give you money in advance. It's one of the few programs they do. So you submit a budget to them as part of your application, and once they've approved it, they ask you to dissect your budget into 3 monthly segments, and then they give you tranches of money based on what your budget says. They do retain 10% to make sure you complete your paperwork to them, but and they pay you that back later on. But it's a great scheme, because if you need to spend $100,000 in the first quarter, plus $100,000 of your own money, so $100,000 of the government, they will pay you about $90,000 up front. There it is in your bank account. Don't clear off to Argentina with the money, please. Anyone, spend it on what you spent. At the end of the quarter, you've got to put another report in, and as long as you spent that money, and you'll drawdown from the government might have been projected at being 120,000 in the next quarter, they will then pay that money less than 10% retention amount. And so
is it Oz Industry that approves those budgets?
Yes. Yes, that's nothing to do with the tax office. Accelerating commercialization has got nothing to do with the tax office. It is all through Oz Industry, and it is a grant. There is no repayments. It's not equity capital in the company or anything like that. Now, it is fairly competitive. In fact, some people would say highly competitive. But each month, the minister announces companies who would receive that grant, and it can be 7 to 10 companies receive $1 million. There's plenty of other people get a couple $100,000 because that's all they need. So it's a great program.
Yes. Okay. Now, keeping our time scale in mind, we then move on to early stage innovation companies. Tell me about those.
This 3 years ago, under then Prime Minister Turnbull, we had the innovation strategy of the government released. And out of that came two new types of companies, early stage innovation company and crowdsourced funding equity raising. So today, the ideal one for what we're talking about is early stage innovation company. It's a company structure that's applicable if the company has a turnover of less than $200,000, not including any accelerating commercialization grant, and expenditure of less than $1 million, and the company is under 3 years of age. There is a loophole, not a process where a company up to 6 years of age can be admitted, but primarily it's targeted under 3 years. So it's young companies. Doesn't mean it has to be young directors or young executives, just a young company. And the company then goes through one of two tests. The first test is called the gateway test, which the company has to earn 100 points. So it gets points for various things. Research and development figures prominently in that. As long as more than 15% of the company's expenditure has been on research and development, they'll get somewhere between 50 and 75 points. If the company has already been admitted to the accelerating commercialization program, they earn 75 points. So if they've done both of those things, they're over 100 points, they're in, and that's what the tax office call black letter law, because the company can prove that's what's happened.
Yes.
So they can then go to investors and say, here's our documentation. We are an early stage innovation company. If they can't pass that test, they then move into the second test, which is known as the principles test, where there's 5 questions that have to be answered, and they're not yes, no answers. The company has to put some effort into them and supply probably at least an A4 page for each of the 5 questions. But they're basically asking questions, is the company genuinely focused on developing new products for or upgraded products for commercialization? And has the company got the opportunity and the leadership skills within the business to be able to run this as a viable business? That's really what they're asking. Now, that needs to be documented, the answers to those 5 questions under the principles test, and submitted to the ATO. The ATO have set up a separate section, and they, in conjunction with Oz Industry, review that material for the principles test and give a ruling within 6 weeks as to whether the company, and they issue a letter.
Right.
And the key then is to use that, either that documentation that the companies prove themselves under the gateway test, or the letter from the taxation office relative to the principles test, to sit down and talk to some potential investors, because the investors get some real benefit out of this. This is what Mr. Turnbull wanted to achieve.
Yes.
He wanted the carrot for investors, and they get 20% off their tax bill up to certain limits. So
of the money they put in.
Of their investment. So a retail investor gets maximum amount is 50,000 they can contribute to one of these companies. So they get 20%, $10,000 off their tax bill. And a sophisticated investor, though, can get 20% up to a maximum rebate of $200,000.
Yep. So that's $1 million bucks.
$1 million. They can put in more if they want to, if the company needs it, but they get that back.
And
the other big
advantage
is that those shareholders then potentially avoid capital gains tax on those shares. If they hold the shares for longer than 12 months and less than 10 years. So there's no capital gains tax. At the end of 10 years, what happens? The company is revalued, and that revaluation becomes the cost base for those investors.
Yes.
So if the company value has gone up significantly, but they just haven't exited, that's all right. They still lock in a benefit.
Very attractive.
At that 10-year.
So let me ask this question, keeping time in mind. In ESS BIZTOOLS, your new product release, you've got the details of each R&D and the accelerating commercialization grants and the early stage innovation company grants that accountants can read, become aware of, share with their clients and educate them, and the firm can decide, will we offer this service or will we seek someone else to do it for our clients? Tell us about what you've created, because I think this is very important for us to be educated so we can help our small business clients where appropriate.
Thank you, Andrew. What we've done is to, and I don't know whether I can bring this up, so just bear with me a moment if I can. I need to get, no, I can't. What I need to bring up, I just don't know where it is.
It's very detailed. I've had a good hard look at it, so
yeah,
worth looking at.
What we start with is the very beginning and at the idea, and then work through what the documentation is required, how you go about this testing of prior art and literature. We've designed forms for that to be recorded on, so you've got a documentation. So we have documented everything.
Yes.
So,
but more importantly, you've actually done it for companies. So
yes. Yep.
You're using that experience to create this process and these forms. So it's not as if you've just pulled it out of your idea basket, you've done it.
No, we had some ideas to start with, but we've changed them fairly significantly as we have worked our way through this process. So what I am doing, Andrew, I think I have got, I'm just trying to bring up the package and be able to show people some of the material that we have in it.
Yep.
So if you, I'm just going, okay, so what I might do, if that's all right, is
share your screen.
Share my screen again. Okay, so we should now be on the ESS BIZTOOLS
yes, we are.
Members homepage we've gone to.
Yep.
ESS BIZTOOLS supplies a lot of material. There's 23 separate product packages, and one of them's research and development, which we are releasing to...
Just hit your enlarge square button at the very right at the top.
Yeah.
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, we now download the content. I've just got to go through this process.
Yes.
So what the accountants are going to receive is a set of documentation that is for them to use, but
yes.
we have also developed a white label documentation that the accountant, who is our subscriber, can download to their clients, because the client is primarily responsible for the record keeping on all this.
Yes.
But I'm just showing you today the accountant's documentation. And we got some feedback from some of our long-term subscribers,
yes,
as to how we should process this. So what I've got on the screen now in this heading accountants documents is all the material that's included.
Yep.
The BAS forms are not the BAS, the tax office. We had that term before they did, Andrew.
Yes.
It's called business advisory services.
Yes.
I was going to change it, but I'm a bit pig-headed on those things. I said, no, we had it first. So I'm just moving down. I'm going to find, and what our feedback from our current subscribers was, why don't you develop a set of flow charts so that we can understand, because you write good articles, but all this is long and gets a bit...
Give me a visual. Yes,
yeah,
give me a roadmap.
Give us a visual.
Yeah, I understand.
So...
excellent.
What we have done, and hopefully you can see that. So this is a form. These double lines, incidentally, the accounting firm badges that up there. That's their space. They can put Bill Brown Accountants or whatever.
Yep.
So this is, and what we've called this whole flowchart series the determination of new knowledge, because that's what it's all about.
That's the test.
So we start off by saying, company leadership or team meeting, come up with an idea. They then move into having a project. They might put together a small team. It might only be one person, but someone's given the job.
And then they test it.
Do some preliminary investigations. They determine whether they're eligible. Now, I'm going to click to some of these papers and that you can see in a moment. And you got a question, do you wish to proceed? If so, because you might have given up by then. You might say it's too difficult. And projects need a coordinator. Someone needs to take responsibility for this.
Yes.
And one of the key buzzwords that the Oz industry and the tax office like using is there needs to be a systematic progression of work.
Yep.
And that starts with this prior art search. So we've got a special form there to help on that. And then we go into documenting what you found from your prior art search, because this is very important. Just don't do a search on the internet and say, well, we did a search and couldn't find anything. Write down on the form what you did find, and you'll find something. We put in these words and we got no response. We put in this, so that you have got a document. Because if you have a fight with the tax office on this, it will be 3 to 4 years' time. So you need to document it. Kate Carnell, the government's small business ombudsman, is trying to get that changed. She's trying to make it that the tax office must make inquiries within 12 months. I read her report again last night. Interesting report. We're going to have that on our website. But she wrote a very interesting report, 47 odd pages in 2019 on this whole program. She's a bit critical in certain stages, but this is a very interesting area for accountants to get involved in. So what's the core activities proposed? What are you going to do to prove something's correct or not correct?
Okay, so Peter, given we're just about out of time, so what this is illustrating is the accounting firm can determine whether they're going to develop the skills to offer this or become aware, educate their clients, and then subcontract it out for someone else to do. But the key point is we need to be aware to help clients, particularly in this current economic situation where innovation is so important due to the changes in supply and demand out there in various sectors and locations. So we can look at, is R&D able to be claimed? Can we get an accelerating commercialization grant, or can we get an early stage innovation company grant? And you've documented the processes. If accountants want to learn more, they can contact you and set up a time and you can walk them through it.
That's right. And what we've basically run through on the screen there this morning, Andrew, is one of the flow charts. In fact, there are 12 of them, and they all record separate parts. So I might just come back onto the screen and saying the other matters we have got flow charts for. Some are not as long as that one, but planning the research and development work. It needs to be documented. Who's going to work on it? The protection of intellectual property, that's nothing to do with the tax office and RD, but you're a former public company chair. You know how important it is to protect the intellectual property. So that's confidentiality agreements, assignment of IP, etc. The systematic progression of work, that's that terminology the tax office use again. And then we look at a labour flow chart, because we need to make sure that anyone working on the project that's part of the team has been recorded. What did they do? How long did they work on it for? Because it's just like any other thing to do with a tax office, you've got to justify. This is all on self-assessment. So we're going to be able to defend it. The same with contractors and what the legislation calls competent professionals. That's basically university people. And we can also have supporting research and development activities. So that's where something else has to occur if you're going to perform the core process to prove the hypothesis one way or another. A client that I've got at present is doing some research on milk. So the example is they have identified a whole series of core research objectives relative to milk. But a supporting process is actually milking the cow. That's supporting, because you can't get the milk unless someone's milked. I think it's a great example, because someone rang me the other day and I just finished working on that project. Another big component of all this is feedstock adjustment. This is where you are selling, the company is selling a product that's been produced whilst there's still research and development being undertaken on that product. This happens. And the government wants you to give them some sort of recompense for the financial support they've given the company. So we've got details as to how that calculation is made, and it
Yep.
can be a fairly big figure. The one
Yes.
I've just finished working with was a big figure. And then we look at the record keeping. We've set up a complete record keeping series of workbooks on Excel to facilitate the recording of the times, from timesheets right through to the contractors, etc., so that all the costs for each project are clearly identified. So the project I just worked on had 22 different R&D projects. So they've all got to be recorded separately. It's not just putting them all into one container box.
So
and
Peter,
then we get to the tax return, what's got to go into that.
Yeah. So what that says to me is accountants in practice need to be aware of it. If they're going to offer the service, they need to allocate a person and money and study it and get on top of it, or they need to utilize a specialist. I know the big international firms have driven hard at this, and some of them have done it well and some of them have not. And they've had to revise their approaches and improve what they do. But to me, it's an area that we need to be aware of. I know I sit on a number of boards, and I feel the whole director team needs to be aware of the research and development process and the various grants. So I think that's a great overview. Thank you very much. It's been very helpful for me to interview you and learn all these things.
Thanks very much, Andrew, for that opportunity. And for people who are watching, we have a public launch of the ESS BIZTOOLS R&D product package on Thursday, the 25th of February at 11 a.m. AEST, 12 noon AEDT. And you can register on our website, www.essbiztools.com.au. So Andrew, thank you very much for joining me today and being part of this R&D journey. I think it's a very interesting area, obviously for our clients, and the big opportunity for the accountants who are watching this. This gives you the opportunity to grow with your clients. Please don't be scared of this. If you need expert advice at somewhere along the chain, you can get it. The clients that I'm working with at present are working with universities, and there's a great relationship developing, and there are grants that you can get to assist you with hiring universities to assist your clients on this process. So it's a whole new world of opportunity. The clients can grow, they can raise capital, and you can really be performing the chief financial officer role for them. And you need to help them at the beginning.
And the Australian small business part of the economy needs this help.
Dramatically at present, I think.
Good on you, Pete. Fantastic.
Okay, have a great day. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Cheers.